Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the Daily Coffee Chat with Ryan Frank. So glad that you are here. Welcome, podcast listeners. Those of you that are catching this on the Ryan Frank podcast, thank you to those of you who are catching this on YouTube, and to those of you on Facebook. If you're on I Love Kidmin or the Ryan Frank Facebook page, wherever you're at, I want to thank you for joining me for the Daily Coffee Chat. Podcast announcement. We said yesterday, Corey Jones and I made the announcement that the I Love Kidmin podcast, new name, new format, coming soon. I believe as soon as next week. I know we're recording the first two on Friday. The I Love Kidmin podcast is going to become the Kids Matter podcast. Excited about the new name. I'm excited about the new format. Be watching and listening for more details on that. Good morning, everybody. So glad you are here. Hey, yesterday was kind of a big day over at Kids Matter HQ because we have been working diligently for a couple weeks, making updates to Global Kidmin Day. Now, we first started talking about Global Kidmin Day before this pandemic ever hit. And y'all got so excited, and hundreds of you got on board. And then the pandemic hit. And we've kind of been a little silent about Global Kidmin Day because just like in your world, things change, right? Well, we are bringing the conversation back. Global Kidmin Day is still on. I would really encourage you to participate. I am sending an email to those of you on my Kids Matter email list this morning. You're probably starting to receive it now, actually. Where I talk about just how proud I am of this community and how willing you are to have crucial conversations. We've been printing Kids Matter magazine now for 15 years. This I Love Kidmin community has been around for 5 years now, which seems pretty crazy. We're in the 10th class of Kidmin Academy. We've been doing MegaCon now for several years. As I get around and talk to Kidmin leaders, y'all are always willing to step up and have those crucial conversations at the appropriate times. So we have, in addition to what we were going to cover in Global Kidmin Day, we have modified our content. So if you haven't been to Global Kidmin Day in a while, go to globalkidminday.com, globalkidminday.com. I don't know that there's ever been a Global Kidmin event quite like this. The idea is it's kind of like a simulcast, but it's a little bit different, where you get your children's ministry team together at the church, or you host other churches, and it is a 3-hour training for leaders and volunteers. I'm super pumped about this. Of course, we're hoping that you can actually gather at your church. If there are restrictions in place or you choose not to do that, you can still participate in Global Kidmin Day. Just instead of your volunteers showing up at the church, you'll send them a link so that they can participate from home. But we have modified the content. That's what I was getting at. I hope that you'll watch my video. Watch the video that I posted on here, because we are going to talk about things like, we're just going to have a real open conversation about race. And we're going to get real and raw and talk about the conversations we should be having as a church with the kids in our ministry, with families, about racial and ethnic diversity. Also, I think with all of this COVID-19, pandemic, kids were already dealing with insecurity and fear and the unknown. And now that's even elevated. So we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna talk about the face of children's ministry in Sunday school and children's kids church as kids come back. We're gonna be super relevant with our content. So go check out Global Kidmin Day. You have two options. You can either purchase a host pass, which means that I'm going to open up the doors of my church, not only for the volunteers in my church, but some of you are leveraged in your city or in your community where you have the facilities and you have the influence where you can invite other churches in and get a bunch of churches together to participate. That's what our hosts are doing. Or you can purchase a watch pass. That watch pass is a license for you and your church to participate, either at one place, or if you're not able to gather, all of your volunteers can participate from home. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that this is kind of like a simulcast, but it's a little bit different. It's a little different in that you don't have to rely on internet like you do for a simulcast. We are actually pre-recording all of the content for Global Kidmin Day. And 10 to 14 days before the event, we're going to email you the file, the whole thing. So you download it, and you could run this whole event, Global Kidmin Day, with no internet, because all you need is the file that we email you, which you'll download in advance, your computer, and a screen. That's all you need for Global Kidmin Day. By delivering the file to you in advance, it takes a lot of pressure off, because you don't have to rely on what if the internet goes down. It takes pressure off us, because we're going to have thousands of churches participating. And gosh, what if the internet messes up for us? We're going to give you the file in advance, and we'll give you links that you can share if you are not able to gather in one place. Ideally, you gather at the church and you participate together. But if that can't happen, some of you will want to do both and. You'll want to allow some to gather, and you'll also share the link with those that choose that they don't want to gather. I hope that you'll read this copy about why we are doing this. We're going to talk about the heart and purpose of children's ministry. We're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of ministering to kids of all ages. We are going to talk about equipping parents to lead spiritually at home. How to navigate the fear and insecurities of our day, teaching kids about racial and ethnic diversity, and more. Got a good lineup of speakers. I may end up adding one or two more. Beth and I will be on there. Corey Jones will be there. David and Becky Wakerly, these are the kids pastors at Hillsong, will be there. I have my coffee. I hope that you do for our coffee chat. Ricardo Miller, Esther Moreno will be with us. Pastor Shannon Lovelady will be with us. Cy Perry is from the UK, is going to be joining us. Jonathan Banks is going to be joining us. We've got one more here. Yeah, Bishop Michael Pitts. And I'll probably adding one or two more. So check this out. If you choose to be a host, we'll put you on the map. Our hosts have some perks. You can check those out there. You can read what some other people are saying. We have some FAQs. I want to make sure you check out Global Kidmin Day, because, again, new website. We have adapted the content and the messaging to address a lot of the topics that we're dealing with. This happens on August 8th. We are hoping that everybody participates on August 8th at 9 a.m. your local time, wherever you're at 9 a.m. And again, hundreds of you have already committed for you and your church, which is pretty awesome. And if you have not considered this, go check out globalkidminday.com. globalkidminday.com. As kids come back, it's creating an interesting dynamic. I've asked David Rausch to join me. David, why don't you hop on here? David and his wife, Mindy, are good friends. David has some stuff to say. He had some interesting thoughts, which is why I asked him to join me today, about helping kids return, especially when they are in adult worship. He's creating a tool for that, and he has some thoughts on that. And if we can't get David to connect, David, are you hearing me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right. Hey, we did it.
Oh, man.
You would think that 2 or 3 months into a pandemic, I would know how to use Zoom now.
Well, and I was just literally thinking, Like, if this really happens again, where David Rausch and I try to do something online and it doesn't work, because we're striking like that would have been like 5 out of 5 strikes. I mean, we just were having a series of bad luck.
I know, and I'm sure that they're probably all on my end. All the problems are on my end.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out, though.
Is this a pandemic beard?
It's not. This is just my normal beard.
Have you always had a beard?
I've had a beard since. So you might know how I took my daughter on the John Muir Trail. I took 13
I remember that.
For a 225-mile hike over the course of 3 weeks. And this beard was one of the results of that. And it has been stuck to my face ever since then. So we're going on 3 years now, probably.
Hey, tell me about that experience.
Oh my goodness. Well, I told each of my kids a long time ago, I said that when you turn 13, I'm going to take you on some sort of just outdoor adventure, just you and I, daddy, daughter, daddy, son, sort of a thing. And sure enough, my now 16-year-old, when she turned 13, we were just going to do 1 week of hiking around Zion National Park. And we were within a month of doing that. And just something inside of me said, you need to do something more challenging than that. Like, that'll be fun. That'll be life-changing for her. But let's push it up a notch. And so we decided on a whim to fly out to California to hike the John Muir Trail, which is probably the most beautiful trail in all of the United States.
How do you spell Muir? M-I-E-R?
Sure, like M-U-I-R, John Muir, the father of conservation in America. It's named after him. And it is 200 and technically the trail is 211 miles of the most beautiful, the most rugged mountain scenery there is. Yeah. And so it was a crazy thought to take a 13-year-old kid, throw a backpack on her, and basically just live out of a tent for 3 weeks while we backpack through the mountains. And let me tell you, it was the most life-changing thing ever for me, and especially for her. Oh my goodness, talk about facing adversity and overcoming it. On day one of this backpacking trip, we were climbing up our very first pass. We're at like 11,000 feet up. Yeah. And she was just struggling. I mean, it was everything she could do to put one foot in front of the other. Yeah. She was having altitude sickness. She felt like she was going to throw up. And I really had to kind of coax her through the whole thing. And at the end of day one, I wrote in my journal and I said, I would give us less than a 1% chance of finishing this thing.
Really?
In fact, what my thought was is we're going to go to bed tomorrow morning. I'm going to ask her how she's doing. And we just might turn around and walk right back out. In total, at that point, we had only done 4 miles, 4 out of 220 some miles. Yeah. But that next morning she woke up and said, I want to keep going. And it was a struggle. We pushed through, but eventually she overcame. I mean, she just grew to be so strong, so confident. And we made it. We made it the entire 200 and some miles, and she couldn't have been happier, and she couldn't have been more proud of herself. And then I did it again a year ago. Last summer, my middle daughter turned 13. Yeah. And it was almost the same experience. We did the John Muir Trail again. Yeah. And 3-4 days in, she was saying, I want to go home. She was in tears. This is too hard. Dad, you drug me out here. This was not my decision. I want to be home with my friends. Yeah. And so I had to coax her through it too. And then sure enough, 1 week in, a week and a half, she just blossomed. She turned this corner and became driven, and she demolished the rest of the trail. And it was like I said, it was a life-changing experience. I would encourage any parent to do something like this. And it doesn't have to be a 3-week backpacking trip. If you don't have the experience or the know-how, I wouldn't encourage you to drag your kids back into the wilderness where, anything can happen. but do something with your kids, make it sort of like a rite of passage when they turn 13 to just spend some alone time, whether it's, daddy daughter time or mother daughter, mother son, whatever it is, just spend some devoted time with them. But I would say that the thing that I loved about what we did is that we did something that seemed like it was impossible. It certainly seemed like it was impossible to them. And at certain points on the trip, I thought it was impossible myself. But we pushed through, and it taught them just how to overcome adversity, how to, face some big things and push through and make it happen. And it was absolutely life-changing.
And those are memories that y'all will remember the rest of your lives.
Oh,
pretty cool.
They will tell their grandkids about this trip.
They will.
Yeah, and I did I was sure to really document it every day. I journaled, I wrote stuff down, and I actually turned them into little picture books for them where there's a picture and documentation of every single day.
Fun.
So yeah, they'll have that to remember. And we've got one more. Fun. My son is almost 12. He'll be 13 next summer. And I'll take him.
You're gonna make another trip, baby.
Yeah, one more coming up.
I love it. David, we talked briefly when we were trying to figure out the audio about Go Curriculum. We talked a little bit about your blog, which is really great. You have some great content.
Thank you.
And then I talked about how we've been talking a little about when kids come back. And one thing, how do you help kids with social distancing and children's read? How do you help kids that have special needs adapt? But another group of kids that may perhaps struggle are those kids that go into adult worship on Sunday mornings because that's the way things are set up, or that's the way mom and dad choose that they want it to be. And I hadn't thought a whole lot about that. I thought about kids with special needs and how are they going to adapt.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm intrigued by this. And I know you've been thinking about it as well. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've been hearing more and more is what churches are doing is they're starting to open back up. Some of them are. They're starting to open their doors again. People are coming in on Sunday morning, but children's ministries are not opening up yet. Yeah. And when those families come back to church, those kids will sit with their parents in the sanctuary. And I actually have a lot of experience with this as a kid myself, because the church that I grew up in, I don't know if they had a children's ministry. If they did, my parents never took me to it. I sat in the sanctuary with them all the time, from as far back as I can remember. Really? On Sunday morning, I sat in the pews, and it was a mixed experience at best for me. I can't remember getting anything specific out of it. I can't remember learning anything specific. I can't even remember ever paying attention. I remember a whole lot of, like, for example, we'd have the bulletin and I'd take the pencil and I would just draw, or I'd color on the bulletin. Or I remember literally I'd take the hymnal and I would flip the pages during church and I would count the pages. I mean, I would count as high as 100 and 200 just flipping and counting pages, despite the fact that the pages were numbered. I mean, nobody needed to count the pages. You were just bored to death. I was just bored. Yep. I was bored to death. Yep. And thankfully, when I got older, there was another church that had a really thriving youth group that I was invited to. And it was through that youth group that I was saved. It was through that youth group that I truly understood what it meant to be a follower of Jesus and how I could give my life to him. And if I hadn't had that, I don't know what my involvement with the church would be. And I even think back to my brother and sister with my family. At best, us sitting in the sanctuary with my parents at best was 50-50 in its effectiveness. I'm in ministry. My brother is very, very much not in ministry, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. He's the other end of the spectrum, and my sister's kind of right there in the middle. She's sort of a casual attender. And so one of the challenges that churches have now is how do you engage kids when they're in the sanctuary? How can we make sure that they're not being overlooked? How can we be sure that we're doing something that helps them grow in their love for Jesus while they're sitting in the sanctuary with their parents.
What do you think a key is, David, to really, I mean, think about it for a minute, the pastors up there talking adult language.
Yeah.
I mean, what are a few of the keys to really get those kids engaged and tuned in where they're not checking out?
Yeah. I think it requires a change on the part of the leadership. I think it does. I think pastors need to adapt the way that they preach to recognize that their audience has changed. And really, the kids are a part of the audience. You have to recognize it as that. The audience has changed. And so you have to communicate in a way that engages your entire audience. One of the things, I mean, they're so visual. Kids love pictures. Kids love props. Kids love object lessons.
They do.
These things engage kids. And so, I mean, if I'm talking to a children's pastor, I'm always going to encourage them to do something like that, something that allows kids to see, not just hear. Because when you only hear something, it makes a certain part of your brain fire. But if suddenly you are seeing things as well, it makes a whole different part of your brain fire. It engages you and it makes your brain work in a different way. And so I'm always encouraging children's pastors to do something visual, to do something tactile, to do something interactive.
I love it.
But for some reason, when we get to teaching adults, we stop doing that. We think, props are for kids. Object lessons are for kids. That's sort of beneath me. But the truth is that pictures and props and object lessons are as interesting for adults and are as effective with adults as they are with kids.
They are.
And so that's the great news, is that when you stop and you think about how do I engage kids in the sanctuary, the reality is those same things help you engage the adults in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And so that's really one of the things I would encourage most for pastors would be to be more visual, to include more pictures, to include more props, to include more object lessons, to be more interactive with the church, and to tell stories.
Yes.
Kids love stories. Adults love stories too. But in particular, again, when I'm thinking of children's ministry, I think, I usually advise people, if you can think of a story that helps you teach the lesson, and it's a story that comes from when you were a kid, when you were their age. Oh, kids love listening to adults talk about when they were kids and hearing stories from that time. And they can relate to it too. They relate to those stories.
They do.
So choose your stories well. Choose stories that kids can relate to.
David, in our last 2 minutes, you've created something. You are creating something to help churches with this.
Yeah. So we've created something. We call it the Family Five. They're 5-minute sermons for the whole family. And we say these are little 5-minute messages that engage everyone from little Timmy to, great Aunt Myrtle. They will all be interested in this. They will all learn from it. It will be fun for everyone. So we've created the Family Five. It's 14 different individual lessons. So 3 months worth of what traditionally would be called kids sermons. That moment in the service where you call the kids all forward. We're not calling them kids sermons though. We're calling them family sermons because they really are for everybody. And churches, especially with the social distancing thing, they're designed so that you don't have to invite the kids forward. If you can do that, great. If the kids need to stay seated with their parents, great. But that's what these are designed to do. They're designed to engage the kids, and they're designed to engage the adults as well. So it comes with the lessons. It comes with the media. It is very visual. It has different props that go with it, different slides that go up on the screen. There are some really fun video games that the whole congregation plays together. that help illustrate the point of the lesson. It also comes with coloring sheets to engage kids even beyond the Family 5 little lesson. It comes with sermon notes for older kids to kind of follow along with the adult sermon and to take notes and draw pictures that go along with the message. So we've really tried to design this entire package to help engage kids from the moment that they walk into the service to the very end, and actually beyond, because we have Go Kids Church Online. They're free videos that we do right now during the pandemic. And so these little Family 5 lessons actually work in conjunction with those videos, so that after the message, when parents go home, they have a resource that they can use during the week afterwards that just helps reinforce what they learned at church.
I love it. So is this something that you're hoping, does a pastor use this in church, or the children's pastor gets 5 minutes in the service to do this? Or
yeah, it's however a church would decide to do it. I think a lot of churches will have the children's pastor get up and it'll be their 5 minutes to address the congregation. But anyone they choose could get up and do that 5-minute family sermon.
Now, I know last time we talked, you were working on this. Is it ready yet? Or how, if somebody wants to know about it, where do they go?
It is. We will send you a link, Ryan. You can put it on your website.
Yes.
It is not launched yet, but I mean, later this afternoon, it is going to be ready. It's going to be ready to go. So we'll give you a link and you can send people there.
That's what we'll do. So those of you that are listening, we'll put this in I Love Kidmin. We'll also put it in the comments underneath this live video on Facebook. This is the Family 5. That's what it's called, the Family 5, right?
The Family 5, yes.
Family 5.
5-minute sermons for the whole family.
It's David Rausch, Go Curriculum. Go check out Go Curriculum if you haven't checked it out in a while. David, is that gocurriculum.com?
Yep, gocurriculum.com.
Go correct.
Yes.
And David, you know my next guest. Karl, why don't you jump on here?
Hey, it's Karl.
It's Karl. What's going on, Karl Bastian? Hold on. Not hearing you. I can barely hear you. Hear you.
I hear you. You're kind of muffled.
You're muffled.
Did I get it fixed?
Yeah, you did it.
There's all these little buttons you got to push.
Yeah.
You know, us old guys in technology. You know?
Seriously, I had trouble at the beginning of mine as well.
Oh man, bring me back a rotary telephone. But I'm kidding. No, what I was saying is we're super pumped because we are doing David's virtual VBS Bolt in 2 weeks. So we are getting ready to, it's going to be kind of our finale of Ministry at Home. So we're pretty pumped about that. Actually, that's my day. Today is Bolt Day. I'm going to be just putting together all the marketing and the emails.
Yes.
We made that pretty easy with templates and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're looking for a cool virtual 3-day VBS. It looks like it's a total about an hour for the parents from the video.
Yeah, I mean, it could be an hour, it could be an hour and a half. Depends on how quickly they move through everything.
So
I'm glad you mentioned that, Karl, because I was teeing up Go Curriculum, but I failed to mention Bolt, and I imagine that you could still get your hands on this if you're still trying to decide what you're going to do this summer.
Oh, it's totally all downloadable. And the nice thing about it is he gives you the full video. It's like 23 minutes that they can just play and pause. But he also, for those of you like with my Kids Church Online, people like to break it up and chop it up. He gives you all the components individually as well. So if you do want to do your own, like put yourself on screen, you know, you can intersperse your own stuff. I'm guessing, David, that's why you have it that way.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
Personalize it as much as they want.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. I mean, for me, it's something I told my boss. Very little upfront time. Those days reminding families, connecting with the families, and then we had a huge prize for our Easter outreach. It was going to be a night at the Great Wolf Lodge with a $200 gift card, and we didn't get to use that. So we're going to make that they have to register, share it, and then they'll have to submit a video at the end of their kids saying the Bible verses to be entered in the drawing for Great Wolf Lodge.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
By the way, you guys don't know this. You have to Google a little bit. Great Wolf Lodge gives for nonprofits, they will give you a free, here, let me show it to you. They'll give you a free night at the Great Wolf Lodge. The trick is, of course, everybody wants them to give them free stuff, right? So all they require, you have to buy a $200 gift card. So there's a small investment, but then you get a certificate good for a year for a family. And it's a great prize because everyone loves Great Wolf Lodge. If you don't have one near you, I mean, it's worth traveling to. They're phenomenal.
Man, I didn't know that.
And
That's
you
a
can
good
keep
little
the gift
hack.
card. No, I'm just kidding. But it's one of those places, like our family went, and like everything costs, right? And you know how sometimes it stinks to win a prize that ends up costing you money. So it's really nice to say all the little amenities and all the little things the kids are going to be asking for, we're giving you $200. So anyway,
cool.
we want to honor Great Wolf Lodge by still using it as a prize. And so that's going to be our prize. So
man, that's neat.
Good work, David. I caught that.
So David, what's the website for the Bolt VBS?
That's gocurriculum.com/bolt-VBS. gocurriculum.com/bolt-VBS. And that has been, when my friend Tony suggested that we make a quarantine-friendly VBS, this was, by the way, this was right after Easter time. And he suggested doing, he said, hey, this shutdown thing is going to go into the summer. There's going to be a lot of people whose VBS plans are going to be blown out of the water. You need to create something that's going to be quarantine friendly and really simple for families to use at home. And here's my confession time. I said to him, that's crazy. I can't do that. I have literally never been a part of a VBS in my entire life. The church that I went to didn't do VBS. My parents never took me to a VBS. I've worked for 2 churches in my life. Neither of them did VBS. Yeah. And so I'm like, Tony, I don't even know how to do a VBS. And he said to me, that is exactly why you need to do the VBS, because it needs to be done in such a different way this year. Everything is so different. Everything has changed so much. We need somebody who's not already kind of confined by the box of how VBS is supposed to be done.
No cookie cutter.
Right, exactly.
Yep,
So we gave ourselves 4 weeks to create this VBS from scratch, which again, I just want to emphasize to anyone who thinks about doing this. This is a bad idea. I've done it. It was like, talk about the lack of sleep and over caffeinated. It was the hardest thing that we have ever done, but oh my goodness, I'm so glad that we did it. Yes, Mountain Dew Zero. I am so glad we did it because a lot of churches have already found it helpful and are using it. In fact, the first churches started using it this past week, first week of June, they started using it. So there has been a tremendous response to this. And I couldn't be happier with the way that it turned out. Yes, I couldn't be happier with the way that it turned out.
It's a lot of fun.
Good work. Go check it out. Andy dropped the link to Bolt in the comments. Thanks for doing that, Andy. David, you're welcome to stick around or you can bounce. Karl and I are going to talk a little bit. Yeah. You want to be the third wheel?
Why not? I didn't know Karl was going to be a part of it. I see this now. How could I leave with Karl?
I know, right?
I was going to talk about all the things I don't like about David, but now I can't.
Yeah, we'll have to change topics.
We'll just change topics.
All right, thanks for that, Karl.
Yeah.
So the first time I met Karl Bastian, I don't know if it was the first time I met. I shouldn't say that. First time I spent some time with Karl had me come to his church to speak. And I remember Karl, and I kind of feel like, as we were talking, I want to shift gears on what you and I were going to talk about, if you'll roll with it for a couple minutes, because I think this will help people. Karl invited me to his church. I remember walking through this beautiful church. It was this old church. It kind of smelled like those old churches had green carpet. And I'm like, man, this church is old and this green carpet. And then we turned the corner and went into this children's ministry part where it just popped. This beautiful children's ministry in this old church. And I was just so amazed around that. And Karl, how did you get this job at this, and now you're at this, I know you're at this growing state-of-the-art church, probably a different culture, different approach. But back then, here you are, you're at this church, it's been around for 100 years with green carpet, and yet this children's ministry.
He really did like that green carpet. I think that's 6 times he's mentioned it.
Yeah, well, I remember that old light. What am I thinking? Right, it was part of the church had green carpet.
I don't remember it. I don't doubt it.
But here,
big white steeple, very very traditional. It was a beautiful church, but very traditional, old fashioned. Yeah, but
what would you say to someone who finds themselves in a church that with great people, but it's 100-year-old church, maybe, and they want children's ministry to shine and be a priority?
You know, there's an incredible story that I don't often tell about how that happened. And for those who are on today, I'll let them in on it. But before I get to what the miracle God did there, it all starts with vision casting. And it all starts with painting a picture for your team. A lot of people do facilities first. I didn't. I was there for 4 years before I did facilities, because to me, I believe you got to lay the foundation. You've got to get the relational ministry stuff going. You've got to get training up. You got to get volunteers up. Then you have an army that has to be contended with. And so it's not just you saying, I want to build a set or I want a cool room. You've got a body of enthusiastic, excited volunteers who all want more. And leadership can't resist that, because they're not saying no to one person who's asking for a big budget item. They're saying no to the most dynamic, exciting aspect of the church. And when they see, because kids and families don't come because of an awesome room, they come because of an awesome experience that their kids have. So you got to create that experience first. And I know that because I did inner city ministry, where I had a youth center a mile from the church, where I was cleaning up beer bottles before church, and I made church as fun there with nothing as I did in a church with an expensive set. So people need to make sure they understand the set is not the ministry. I've been, in fact, after I went back to visit there, they weren't even using the set, because the next guy, he didn't last long, but he wasn't even utilizing what was there, because the set did not create the magic that the leader does.
That's right.
And what happened there was a God thing. We began to pray about it and dream about it. And then back then, I have a puppet named Gus. A lot of you have seen Gus in my videos. Well, I would bring him out of a bag, and I had a whole out of the bag routine where he doesn't want to go in, and I'm fighting him, and it's just part of the humor of bringing him to life as he comes out of a bag. Well, I had a dad call me up one day and wanted to meet, and he didn't seem happy, and I was nervous, and so I met with him, and he says, I send my girls to church to learn the Bible. They come home talking about puppets and games and all this crazy stuff. And so I listened to him, and I said, I want to commend you for being a father who's passionate about his kids' church experience. I said, if I could get every dad as passionate about you, I don't even care if they're mad at me. I love that. But then I said, would you just come for 2 weeks so that you can understand? Well, he came, and he got whatever Gus's problem was, fit the lesson, the game was an object lesson, he got it so much. He came to me and he said, Karl, wouldn't it be nice if, instead of the whole bag routine, as funny as it is, if you had like a set, like Gus had a house, and Molly had a house, my girl puppet, and apartment buildings. And I said, well, yeah, that's our vision. And I explained our goal. He said, what do you think that would cost? I said, well, I haven't gotten to budgeting yet. We're just vision casting. And he gets out his checkbook and he writes a check for $20,000. Says, you think you can build it for this?
Oh my word.
So I take the check back to, because it's made out to the church, not me, of course.
Yeah.
I take it back to my boss, and you're not going to believe, and this is no criticism of my senior pastor at all, but the policy of the church, which I agree with in theory, is that you can't have sugar daddies in different ministries writing checks, because it's not fair. And a project has to be established by the board, and then people can designate giving. Otherwise, I tried to find a way through it. My boss felt bad, but I had to go back to this guy, return the check, and say, and explain dude, this is not a criticism. I love your passion, love your generosity, but there's 5 pastors on staff, and how would I feel if the youth guy had a rich guy in his ministry, or the whatever. So he goes, I could see his gears turning. He goes, I get it. I'm sorry, I was not trying to cause any problems. I just was trying to help the kids ministry. And he goes, tell you what, how about this? He rips up the check, gets his checkbook out, and he writes a check for $100,000. And he says, what if I give all the pastors each 20? Will that help?
Wow.
So I went back. I didn't go to my pastor privately. I was a little shrewd. I waited till staff meeting, and the pastor was explaining in the whole staff meeting about how I'll just use his first name, Ed, had given this money, and how Karl did the right thing and returned it. And he said, so he asked me in front of everybody, how did that go? And I said, well, he took it really well. And I pulled the check out, and I said, he asked if he could give each of us 20,000. And I knew by giving it to him in front of the staff, that was why I said it was shrewd. There's no way he could reject it. And so a youth pastor got a video studio, worship pastor got new ding-a-ling bells and choir robes, missions got to bless a bunch of missionaries. I don't really know what the senior pastor did with his. He did get a nice Lexus after that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, actually, it went toward getting rid of the green carpet, to tell you the truth. Went toward a renovation project. But yeah, God provided it miraculously. But it starts with vision. And God will provide. It may not be an Ed, but he will provide in some way if he's behind it.
Now, Karl had a good story on how vision should be your first and foremost. I've got a story on how I almost got Karl fired.
Did
you remember the story?
Did I know this?
Yes, you know it. It'll come back to you.
Okay.
So that same trip, Karl said, Ryan, if you're going to be here for the weekend, why don't you teach kids church on Sunday? And I said, that'll be great. And we got toward the end, and we needed to fill some time. And I said, let's play Mad Dash. I said, Karl, do you have some prizes? And let's fill this. You had like a kiddie pool up there, and I need something to hide the prizes in. And you were like, you remember this, Karl?
I didn't remember it being you. Is it the packing peanuts?
He said, here's some prizes. So we put prizes in this kiddie pool. I said, no, we need to hide them. And he looks around the room, and you'd got a package. I don't think they had Amazon.
Packing peanuts.
You got a package.
I did not remember that was you. I've been feeling guilty about this all these years.
Yeah.
That was
will packing peanuts work? And I said, sure, dump them in. So so the prizes, these little toys are hidden in all these packing peanuts. And the kids have to dash up, and they have to grab prizes, how the game works. What we didn't realize was that these packing peanuts were the kind that stuck to everything, and they went all over the place.
All over the whole church. There was
literally. Didn't they end up down the hallway and through the whole church?
Upstairs in the auditorium, parking lot, everywhere, because they stuck to the kids. And then once they fell off the kids, people walked on them. It turned into this white powder that was everywhere and would stack electricity. It wouldn't vacuum.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
I forgot that was you. I suddenly absolved of my guilt.
Yeah, that was me. I don't think, did that church janitor ever talk to you again?
I cleaned it up. That's my policy. If you make the mess, you clean the mess. So I wish every ministry did that. I think that's pretty common in kids ministry.
Oh man,
it's not very common in youth and other ministries. Let me just say, in a safe space here.
So Karl, in our last 3 minutes, tell us, you're a digital guy. You've created kidology.org. You're doing great. You're doing a lot of digital stuff in your own children's ministry. We've enjoyed you've shared that with the community, which has been awesome. How do you think once the kids all come back, whatever that looks like, how do you think digital is going to impact that? We've been forced to become video editors, and we've been forced to add media ministry to our.
Only a few minutes. Let me just mention really quick for folks to check out kidology.org/COVID-19.
Okay.
Because I've done webinars on editing and Zoom calls, a whole bunch of stuff, and I've had fun. I celebrate this era because it has forced the church to be the church.
Yeah.
And it's been challenging, but people have picked up skill sets during this era that are going to outlast this era. Those that have learned to do video editing, I've produced kids church lessons every week. They're on Kidology /KCO, Kids Church Online. Hundreds of thousands of views, emails from all over the country. And I don't even know the total views because a lot of people download it and they do the splicing and slicing and then they host it themselves. So I don't even get a view count on those. So it's been really exciting. One of the things that I began to wrestle with halfway through this, trying to be a proactive leader and think ahead, is, okay, this era is going to end. I'm spending 30, 40 hours, a week producing a video that they'll be on Kidology forever, but they won't even be needed in the future, So I was like, my issue was the investment of my time. I always believe you have to be a steward of the investment of your time, and you need to put your time where it's going to be scalable or it's going to outlast, because if you're putting a lot of time into a one-time thing, that's what's beautiful about Bolt. I mean, there'll be families next year that can use Bolt. It can be used on a Sunday morning for 3 weeks if you wanted to. Sending it home to family one a week, it could be a 3-week thing instead of a 3-day thing. So it's worth the investment of that time when you know it's going to have longevity. So I launched something new. It's just pastorkarl.com, because I realized I've always had a channel to children's pastors, but when it comes to kids, other than my own church, I don't have a direct channel to kids. And it's challenging in our world. YouTube channels, I won't even get into that, but they're making it harder and harder for good, safe online reasons. So I have to convince children's pastors to show their parents, and then their parents to show their kids. So what I've done is I have years of videos and object talks and object lessons and toy box tales. So I'm creating a website that is going to be direct to kids. And I'll be inviting other content creators if they want to be a part of this. Full disclosure, man, I was inspired by All Stars Kids Club and my friend Simon Perry. It's similar to what he's doing, because I've been sharing that with my kids. But I was sending him videos, and Uncle Charlie, another great one, valuedbygod.com. So I want to make sure they get promo as well. We can't have too much for kids, but I didn't want to be like waiting on someone else to add the content. I want to be able to add it myself. And it's going to be in every app store. Right now, it's just a website as I build it. But this is where my family or my kids are going. They go to the website, they click on you can click on this Sunday, and the lessons there, the parent discussion guides there. So I'm excited that as we transition back into in-person meeting, I'm going to be still creating media content that I'll show in Kids Church, but that I'll also push out here so that I can reach the kids who didn't come to church this Sunday, kids that'll never go to church, kids in my community. I'm going to have little business cards when I'm out and I meet kids and I make a balloon animal. I'm going to hand the parent, always hand the parent, hey, check out pastorkarl.com. I create a lot of fun stuff for kids. Check it out. So I think every church needs to look at how am I going to continue to reach kids that will never come to church, or that their parents take them to big church, which is not the end of the world, but they're missing out on age-appropriate, age-specific targeted learning. And you can share what others are doing. Before I started my own, I was using All Stars Kids Club, which is phenomenal. So not everyone needs to create something, but they do need to answer the question, how am I reaching kids through their devices? Every kid's got their own devices now. And parents have a love-hate, or maybe a hate-hate relationship with YouTube and Instagram because of the crap. And you can try to filter, and you can filter explicit, but you can't filter ungodly. There's no ungodly filter. Things that are negative. So I'm excited to be answering that for High Point Church. And if it has an impact beyond High Point Church, then fantastic. But I need to be able to say, how am I reaching my kids who aren't my kids' church? I think, like everyone should think, is the funnest place for a kid on a Sunday morning. And a lot of that's because we use Go. But there's kids that aren't.
Thanks for the plug, Karl.
You were thinking it, so I just you're too humble to say it. So, but we need to get outside the walls. Once our walls open, we don't hunker back down inside the walls. We have to have a both and. I had a friend of mine say it. We used to be churches. We used to be physical churches with a digital presence, He said, we need a shift to being digital churches with a physical presence. And I've just been, that's just been buzzing in my head. How do we become a digital children's ministry that, oh, by the way, if you want to meet Pastor Karl, come to High Point Church. You know, if you want to see Gus in person, here's where we gather on Sunday mornings. But that's no longer a requirement to be learning in a fun, interactive, creative way.
Yeah.
How'd I do?
You did great, and congratulations on PastorKarl.com. I shared
Yeah,
it.
totally
I hadn't seen that. That looked great.
You know, there'll be no charge for it. It's just something that I want to have that channel to do ministry to kids without the restrictions of wherever you embed your videos, you can host them right there.
I love it.
I've known Karl Bastian now for how long have I known you? 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah.
3 years, something like that. Karl is one of the most creative people that I've ever met. Karl's creative brain never turns off. It just keeps going and going, which is probably a curse to Karl. His brain never gets any rest. I love the stuff that Karl comes out with. I love watching his puppets. I love everything that he produces because it's done with such love and such quality, and it's obvious in everything you do, Karl. Way to go on all that stuff.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, Karl, you two gentlemen are the real deal, and I'm glad to be your friend. Thank you for being champions in the Kidman community. Thanks for joining me on the coffee chat.
All right.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
GoCurriculum.com, Kidology.org, PastorKarl.com. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day. See you.
You too. Bye.
All right. Well, wow, what a great coffee chat today. Thank you, David Rausch. Thank you, Karl Bastian. I love Kidman. Let's stay in touch. We will see you tomorrow at the same time. If you have a question or something you want to talk about, text the number right there, 833-792-6372. We will see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.